Okay guys, so in this section I want to talk about credentialing, and I want to show you some of the best case scenarios. So when we start getting into these vendor products like Google and Microsoft OneDrive or anything inside of Microsoft, you get an extremely complicated setup, because to connect to these services, you first have to connect to their cloud platform, and then you have to go through a security layer. So when you're dealing with things like, LinkedIn or Notion or YouTube. Well, not YouTube is another one of those Google things, but maybe even Telegram or JotForm. Let's use JotForm. That's pretty common. You just get an API key, and most of these systems, most of these platforms, they're really easy to find. So, for example, let's go to Let's go to my JotForm account. I have many of them. I don't know which one I'm going to log into. Yeah, here's JotForm company. Let's go to JotForm. Actually, log in. I have so many of them. Let's maybe use this one. I'm not sure if that one even is around anymore. Test form. Yeah, this looks like this is one of them. All right, so I'm going to go under here. I'm going to click under my account, and that's what you need to look for. And I can't remember off the top of my head, and I did this on purpose so that I can help you kind of navigate where you might find this information. So typically it's buried under your account information or your admin or wherever you manage your account, your billing, and all this other stuff. This is an admin console. This is settings. So typically I'd start here, and then I look on the side, and there it is, API. And so we can click on this, and so these are API keys for Android. These are API keys for JotForm sheets, and a bunch of stuff. And here's where you authorize your app. To create a new key, you just create the new key like that, and I guess you can change the name. And so at this point, it is what it is. So you grab the key, you pop it over into н8н, and lo and behold, you got life good. So now that you've seen my keys, I'm going to have to go back and regenerate them so that you guys can't use them. So in any event, with those deleted now, life is good, and I'll wait for it to break because I don't even think I use them anymore. And if it does, I'll have to go create the keys. But this is where typically in most platforms you go into, wherever your account is, into settings, and somewhere buried in there is your API key or the ability to generate one. If you can't find it, you can contact their support or check their support documentation, or if they have a chat AI bot, they'll probably be able to walk you through that quite simply. And that's how you deal with API keys. It is the best and most simple use case, but now we're going to get into the bonkers of Google Cloud Console, and ultimately at the end of the day, to drive us all absolutely insane, we'll deal with Microsoft Entra ID and Microsoft Azure Portal and all that stuff that comes along for that chaos. Those are going to be long videos, I'm sorry. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Welcome back to another video. We are talking about credentialing and some of the more esoteric ways that you're going to find yourself having to get to your data just to connect. And I'm doing two videos on Google and Microsoft because they are, Google's not bad, a little crazy, but not too bad. Microsoft, on the other hand, is an absolute nightmare. And I wanted to create videos because I have a feeling a lot of people are going to get stuck. And it has awesome documentation, but even with all of the awesomeness in there, there's so many steps that some people are visual learners, and I'm doing this for those learners that are visual benefit learners as opposed to those who can just read the documentation in н8н. You probably won't even need to watch this video then, unless of course you get stuck and you need to see something happening. Okay, so let's get going here. Let's go into the Google console that says API console. I guess it would get me there. Here, let's just see if that search because it's there. Okay, this is what you want. Google Cloud Console. So I put API, but just search Cloud Console or Google Cloud Console. And I'm already authenticated and logged in with MFA too, so I've already done all this before this video to make sure I can get in without a hitch. And lo and behold, I'm in. Now, when you first sign up for this, if you haven't ever gone into this area, you're going to be forced to create a project. It'll ask you to maybe do a billing account, and you don't have to do a billing account, but I don't have any billing account linked to this project, so this should be free as long as you kind of follow along and do whatever. When you do get to this, you may have to find yourself over here. It may give you a nice, quick, and easy link to get set up. I can't remember. There was quite a bit of steps to get it set up, just to get signed in and to create a project. So what I want to do is try to figure out how to create a new project to show you at least what that experience looks like. So let me click here. We'll do new project. Yeah. Let me go back to the beginning homepage. All right, so you might land here, and if you do land here, trying to see if there's any, yeah, nope. I was trying to get to see if there was just a quick, easy way to do a project, but I'm already in a project. So in any event, you need to create a project. Your project screen will look something like this. If you don't have a location, don't worry about it, but you just go ahead and you create it and then follow the steps. It's pretty straightforward, but it does get a little kludgy. Assuming, and hopefully you get into your account and your project, you'll wind up landing to a place similar to this. What you need to do at this point, assuming your setup and configuration is at least good enough to get to this point so you can get into a project, what you want to come over here is to APIs and API services. If you can't find this block or you don't have this quick access link, you get to it from this hamburger menu in the top left corner, and then scroll down a little bit till you see APIs and services. And what you want to do is click on Enable API and Services. All right, so here you go. These are all of the APIs and services that I have enabled. So let's look through this a second. I don't have YouTube in the list, but I do have Gmail, and I do have Sheets, and I do have Drive. And so every service that you want to connect to, I'm going to pull open a new menu, okay? Each of these application services requires you to enable and flip the switch to connect. So Docs, Sheets, Meet, Photos, Maps, whatever. You've got to turn and flip the switch on for each one. Now, I don't have anything turned on for YouTube, so I'm going to search YouTube. And we'll go YOUTUBE, YouTube Analytics, YouTube Data API. Let's try that. And here it is, yep. All right, so there's a bunch of other stuff that's there. Usually you can just type in Enable API Services, and then you can search here and just do YouTube. So there's a couple different search boxes. I don't know if you saw what I just did there. First, I used it up here. And then what I did is I was in this area, or this screen, and I clicked Enable. And then from here, I got another search box. And this one's a little bit more user-friendly. So if I type in YouTube and just leave it at that, I do then get all of the YouTube results, because I might want the analytics, I might want the reporting, I might want all of them. But if I want all of them, I got to flip the switch and turn them on for each and every one. And now once I enable it, it's good. So first thing, whatever you're trying to connect to in n8n, let's do localhost 5678. Let's go over to credentials and use the drop down to create a new credential. Whatever it is that I want to connect to. So if it is YouTube, YouTube OAuth API, I click continue, I'm going to get this. And this is the part that gets confusing because it's not an API key. These OAuth 2 things are really somewhat of a bear. The prerequisite, if you're not dealing with an API, so if you're dealing with Microsoft stuff and you're dealing with Google stuff, or you're dealing with, and there's 1,000 or 400 plus connectors in here, and each service is going to have their own way. So the complexity of this is either an API key, which is simple, or you'll get these client IDs and secrets and OAuth 2s and all this other weird stuff. You definitely want to follow the documentation that you get from N8N to get where you need to be. Okay, and so a lot of this documentation is typically available from the connector one. So if I go into connections again, I go to create credentials and YouTube OAuth 2. Normally, there was there right in front of me. Need help filling out these fields? Click Open Doc. Okay, here's the Google credentials, right? And it walks you through all of this. It's a lot of reading, and that's why I created this video, because it's really easy to miss something or not read something that you think you don't need to read. And if you want to go deep into something, then you'll only get half of it configured, and this is where it gets really sticky real quick. All right, so now that I'm on the YouTube side of N8N trying to get my credentials, I'll leave it here for a moment, and let's jump back over into YouTube, and I'll go ahead and I'll enable this. So when I enable that, it flips the switch and it shows up in that long laundry list of APIs that I'm allowed to use. So if I go back over here to enable APIs and services, now YouTube shows up in this long massive list of things that I've enabled and turned on in my APIs and services. So it's security by literally enablement, and it's arduous because you have to do it for each and everything. So Sheets and Drives and Gmail and all that stuff. Now, when it comes to creating the credentials, that's also a little bit mind-numbing. I have one credential here that I create. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And I'm going to say OAuth client, because this is an OAuth client. And so we want the OAuth authorization here. We don't want to choose API key. You want the OAuth. So OAuth client ID, application type. In this case, N8N is always a web-based application. So these are other types of application, a desktop app or mobile or even a Chrome extension. Then there's the Windows platform, which is the universal window platform, blah, blah. You need to choose web application. Give it a name like class. I called mine N8N. Anyway, then it's going to ask for authorized JavaScript origins. You don't need this for this particular use case, but you do need this guy right here, okay? Authorization redirect URLs. Click Add URI, come back over to N8N, and you want to copy out this OAuth redirect URL. Now, that being said, remember the environment variable, webhook underscore URL, and then that domain that you put in there. This is the domain that I have for this instance here that I've turned on. And because of this, you copy this out. If you have some weird thing like localhost or whatever, this is not going to work. You need to be able to literally copy what's in here on the internet. Able to go and get to it, and that's okay. This is a good thing because it's actually answering. But if you get like a 404 page not found, it's not being hosted up. It's inaccurate. So if this says localhost, it won't work. If it says something something, it's not a .com or .us, .edu, whatever, a real domain name that's accessible from the internet, this will not work. Just stop, go back, configure the webhost underscore URL with a proper domain name. And here's the thing: when you define the webhook underscore URL, if you do not prefix it with a proper HTTPS, in other words, you just put in this and you don't put in this whole thing, then you're going to run into trouble too, because this will be truncated and it still won't work. So make sure it looks something similar, and then you just grab it and you pop it in, And that's all you need to do. And then you hit create. And now you get this client ID, and you go back to н8н and you paste that in here, and you come back over here for client secret, and I copy that and I paste that here. Okay. Now you can't just hit, I mean, you can hit save, right? But it's still not finished. You have to click this sign in with Google. This is the part that gets really bonkers and crazy. So I'm going to choose my Georgia Digital Profile account, and this is the part that flips everybody out. They think there's an error and there's a problem, and it's not a problem. I mean, it is a problem because it looks like a problem, but the problem is it's Google's trying to protect you, and it doesn't recognize н8н as a registered or legitimate app. All you do to make this work is click on Advanced, and then you have this anyway, just read it. Then you have to click the second link down here at the bottom. Go to CNX Lab, blah, 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 blah. Unsafe. It is safe because it's your site. It's your н8н. You know what it is. It's good. Click it. And now what you have to do is select all. And this is making sure that this credential is allowed to connect to this service. Again, we're connecting to YouTube. And we've already turned it on Google, so we're good to go. And if we didn't, we'd be getting errors already. Click that, and now the connection is successful. So now we have properly authenticated YouTube, and we are good to go. And we should be able to go. Let me hit keep editing. So for some reason, I don't know why this should have connected. So maybe I took too long explaining all of this. Let me just go through and repeat the steps and make sure that I continue to connect, and connection successful. Okay, well, I think the problem is I've already saved this. Close. No. Let me go back into here. Okay, it worked. So see, it says account connected. For some reason, the screen didn't refresh. I think it screwed up because I hit save first. If I didn't hit save, it would have shown that. But if you do hit save, then if you encounter that, this is how you go through. And it's a quirk. Like I said, it's a little bonkers, a little crazy. Anyway, so that was a lot of steps to get this set up. The key takeaways here, and what I need you to remember, is that when you're dealing with these APIs and services, you need to first make sure that whatever it is you're trying to connect to is enabled first. And then once you enable it, you can continue to use that same credential again and again and again and again and again, because all you have to do is just use the same secret, use the same client ID, and paste it in. But in н8н, it's a little funky, right? This is just YouTube. If I want to connect to Google Sheets, which I already have here anyway, OAuth Google Sheets, continue. Again, I can use and recycle that same client ID, that same client secret. I've already enabled it over here. I just paste this in, and it's good. But the problem, the funkiness of н8н is you need to make sure that you provide a separate credential for each object, each service, each application that you're trying to connect to in Google. And the same thing's going to apply to Microsoft when we get into the next video. Although when you see that, that's going to be hellacious. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video. This will get you far enough along to not only connect to Google, but again, high level, key takeaway, problematic areas. You create the account, you have to have a project, you don't need a billing account. Okay, next, make sure that you enable your APIs, and then once you're done with all of that, go ahead and create your OAuth credentials, making sure that you have the redirect URI set up. The prerequisite to that is making sure that in your environment variable in Docker or in the node file, if you're doing it on Windows, you need to put the environment variable in Windows. I'll quickly digress to show this as quick as I can. Unfortunately, I got this other window buried. You go into environment variables, you come over here. So here's an example of environment variables, right? And I'll just, for the user, because usually you're running this in the context of a user, you could add it as a system variable. Anyway, the point is, key value, it's webhost underscore URL, and then the domain name, https : whatever, and you put it in here, and that's how you do it on Windows. On Linux, it's a .env file. If you're using the non-sucking service manager, I showed you how to do that in that video as well. That will make sure that you get this OAuth redirect URL. If you haven't watched those other videos, you're going to need to watch those because I go into it and I'm not going to go into it here. But nonetheless, as long as this is good, then you can just continue to use these types of credentials, and then you put in your client secret and your client ID for each and every one of these services, and you're good to go. Okay, that's the wrap. We'll see you in the next video. Okay, everybody, this is the craziness that is how you would connect to services inside of Microsoft. And unfortunately, I don't know that too many of you will do this or need to use this, but because it's such a bear, and I am a Microsoft first advocate for lots of things, I'm pretty familiar, so I'm comfortable showing you how to do this. However, it is arduous, as you're going to find out. It is not easy. So if you need to connect anything in Microsoft, hopefully this video is beneficial for you. So I'm going to create a credential, and I'm going to pick, let's see, I don't know if Microsoft Word or any of the applications. PowerPoint's not in here. Excel. Yep, Microsoft Excel is one of them. PowerPoint is not. Outlook is, I believe. Yep, there's Outlook. What else is there? There is, I don't know, would Word be in here? Microsoft Word? No, I don't. I see WordPress, Workable. OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive. Yep, wow, OneDrive's not there. So Yeah, you won't be able to connect with a native connector to Microsoft services from n8n unless you use their API, which you wouldn't use this. You would use the HTTP connector, and then you'd manually have to build all of that out according to the API specification. So therein is part of the problem. Obviously, n8n also agrees with my sentiment. Connecting to Microsoft is a real PITA, acronym PITA. We'll let you figure that one out. Go look that one up. In any event, what I'm going to use here probably, let's use Microsoft, let's use Outlook. Yep. Okay, hit continue. Looks a little bit different than Google, right? Same concept though. The good news is all we need is the client ID and the secret. But how do we get that client ID and the secret's a problem. I'm not going to go into the ramble that I went on the last time about the OAuth redirect URL, talked about environment variables, reinforced the fact. I don't think too many people will watch this video. If you want, watch the Google video, because that'll be helpful probably too as well, because everybody uses YouTube or OneDrive or something to that, because almost I think everybody has a free Google account. In any event, just make sure that you have the environment variable set so that the thing works on the outside. That's the prerequisite, because you're going to need this OAuth redirect URL. It's also the callback. Now, let's jump into the joy that is Azure. There's a couple of ways of skinning this cat, so to speak. That's actually a horrible saying. Probably should stop using that. All right, the easy way is to simply just go directly into app registrations, because that's what this is. But it is technically a sub-service or a sub-configuration service that is tied so closely with what used to be called Azure Active Directory that it has now been renamed to Microsoft Entra ID. So if you know it is Active Directory, this is it. If you know it is Entra ID, obviously it says that, so that would be clear. Most people would be inclined, at least the people that I have talked to, that I watch, that I train, they all seem inclined to go through this. Very few know that you can just type in at the top app registration and get to app registrations. But I'm going to show you the long way and not the short way, because the short way is a lot easier. But if I show you the long way, then it'll be just an extra source of knowledge that'll help you when you're trying to help other people. So underneath this is under manage. We manage the users, we manage the group. So when you have Microsoft Outlook and Office and 365 and blah, 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 typically you manage them in the admin console. But when you do, it throws a copy of all of that into this authentication platform. This is essentially like Azure has IAM. This is like Amazon has IAM. Azure has Azure Active Directory, now Entra ID. So with that being said, we're not dealing with any of this, but you see app registrations is a sub item to manage. In addition, you manage devices, enterprise applications, identity governance. That's out of scope for all this. We just want to deal with the app registrations because that's what we're doing. Now, these are the owned applications. So if you've created one already and you can't find it if you were to land here, keep in mind there are 3 tabs. There are deleted applications, owned applications, and all applications. My advice to you is if you can't find it, click on the all applications, and 99.9% of the time, you'll find it under all applications, okay? So this is about creating a new one, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's just click into new, and I'm gonna use the name, we're gonna just call this n8n, to keep it simple, dash class. No dyslexic there. Okay, and so what I usually choose is the second option in case we get into the use case where, I don't know, we start creating subdomain, subdirectory. I let it go as multi-tenant. This seems to be the best use case for configuration. All right, now again, back to almost like Google. We have to tell it what is the application. In this case, it is web. We want to choose web, okay? This is like desktop, mobile. This is much simpler than Google because Google gave us a lot more options, but the takeaway is both options are the same in both platforms. You want to choose web. All right, this URL is going back to the n8n callback. And if you click on it, it will copy it, and now I did. And so now we'll put it in here, and we're good to go. Now I can register this, okay? That's the simple part. This is where you're probably going to start to lose your mind a little bit, because now that you've created this, you will have a client ID. So let's go ahead and copy that, and we'll put this in here. And now we need the secret. So secret, we don't see it. Okay, now if you're not familiar, you come down here, and here's certificate and secrets. So now we kind of create a new client secret. Now, before I do that, I want to have you take notice that there are 3 other tabs in here, and these are what they call tabs, right? But it lands on client secret. If yours doesn't, just keep your eye on the prize. You need to create a secret, and this should say new client secret. So we'll click that, we'll give it a description, and we'll call it just n8n auth sec class. Really long, but nonetheless. And now here's the bummer. This is highly secure and a PITA, again, because you can only do this for, you know, a range, which is good, but if you just want to set it and forget it, you can't. The maximum is 24 months. And if you try to get jiggy with it and say, okay, I want to start as of yesterday. No, you can start from today. And right here, look, the value must be between, so you can't go any greater than this anyway. So you're going to have to set a reminder for yourself, because at some point in the future, whatever that point is that you choose here, this thing is going to die and your flows are going to break that are reliant on this connection. So again, a real PITA. So we'll leave it there. We'll set the maximum, because I'm sure most of you will. I will. Now, if your company has a process procedure and people that manage this type of thing, they will have this whole roster of what they need to keep up with when. I wish that were the case. That is the outlier. I have only seen, and I work with a lot of Fortune 100, 500 companies, and let me tell you, they are all, for the most part, really, really bad at doing this. Only a are really, really good at this one thing. So 9 times out of 10 expected to break, because very, very few, 10% of the big companies have their ducks in a row. A lot of them are just literally all figuring it out as they go, and or flying by the seat of their pants because maybe turnover or lack of procedure or process, I don't know. But if you're in one of those companies, don't count on your company having it buttoned up, because you're setting this up. You're the one that probably needs on setting up these procedures, at least to some extent. If you don't have global access to do this thing, then just set your reminders for yourself to follow up with this, because this is going to be a real pain in the neck for you. All right, anyway, so the secret ID is one thing, but what you really need to capture off is the value. The value is the client's secret. So you think you do the ID, but the value is actually the secret. So I want you to think in terms of the JSON that I've been harping on throughout this class. Key value, key value. And so what we need is the value, okay? So just remember, the value is the value, especially here. You're gonna get tripped up. I did it. A lot of other people I see do it. They gravitate because it says secret ID, and they come over here and it says secret, and they just think ID, okay, it's an ID, it's a number, it's a value. I put it in there, but no, it's the value from the value column. All right, enough rambling on that. We can use a shared mailbox, turn it on, turn it not on. Anyway, I'm not going to click save because you saw what happened last time. I'm going to click create or connect my account. And with any luck, this should work. I'm going to use my personal lab account here. Permission requested, n8n, consent on behalf of the organization, or I can just consent for me. And the connection is successful, okay? So that's all well and good. And it's gone out and it's saved. I'm going to keep editing. I'm going to close. I'm not going to save. I'm not going to save. And I'm going to go into here. And like before, I guess there must be a bug in this н8n thing. Anyway, it did save. So it is connected and we're good. But there's a problem. We haven't given this connection rights to anything. So I want you to think of the Google. If you don't remember or you haven't seen the Google, one of the steps in Google is we needed to give access. We needed to flip the switch and turn the switch on for Gmail, for Sheets, for Drive, for whatever. In this case, we need to do the same type of thing, but we need to do it in Azure. And Azure doesn't make it clear or straightforward or whatever. They use this thing called Graph API. And Graph API is really, really good and powerful, but we need to turn on and expose an API. And so there's scope, there's all this other stuff, and so there's permissions and things that we need to do here. Okay, so here's our API permissions, and then there's this other thing I want to call out right here. Grant admin consent for David Soden Private Lab. Some of these are not going to be admin consent on. So this is the Graph API. This is already saying no. Watch what happens when I push this. I'm going to flip this, say yes, and now all of a sudden, anything that was not there is turned on. And I'm turning this on so that we can gain access to what we need to do. Now I need to add permission here. Now I'm on API permissions, but I don't necessarily need to do anything with Expose API for right now. But over here, under the Microsoft APIs, we might be able to, sometimes you can get lucky and find something directly with what you need, either an Azure service or whatever, but we did Outlook. So I'm gonna look at, to see if I can find Outlook. And I haven't set up Outlook before, so we're going to learn this one together. My APIs, obviously I don't have any that are there. So APIs my organization uses, let's do out. Okay, that doesn't show up there. Let's go back to Microsoft APIs. And where would this be? Maybe this would be here, delegate permission, application permissions, your application running background services or daemon without a user signed in. No, I don't think this is going to work here. Let me try the Expose API. We don't need to add a scope per se. Authorized client applications, application URI, add, no, don't need that, that's not it either. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be over here. Give me a second, I need to read the documentation. I'm sorry, I'll come right back. So I did find something that I was looking for earlier that I didn't find, so I didn't go to the documentation, but I'm gonna take my chance with this because I'm pretty sure that this works because every single thing in the platform is on Graph API now. If you look at this right here, read, I don't know, it was a banner, so I ignored it. I was looking at all these tiles here and my eye didn't focus there, but anyway, if it was a snake, it would have come out and me and killed me. So 9 times out of 10 for most of the services, because everything is now bundled and packaged under the Graph, you can see that Outlook and Exchange is in here. So this will be it. Now the next question you need to answer is, how do you want this permission to turn on? So we can have this running as a service account, something that would run in the background. In this case, it's an Outlook connector. So I don't want to do as a daemon service account. I want to do the application needs to access the API as the signed in user. And you saw when I did н8н, when I went down here and I had to click to sign in, I had to sign in with my actual email account that I have on the tenancy. So in that use case, I want to get to my Outlook. I don't want somebody getting into somebody else's Outlook, and then that service or daemon, I would have to give access to my mailbox, and so that's a whole pain in the neck to set up. So we're going to go with delegated permission in this use case. And now here's where we can go through all of the possible options for this type of thing here. So Microsoft Graph, here's email, view user's email address, yes. Open ID profile, view user's basic profile, I would say yes. We don't need to do any of these other ones here. But if we continue to scroll down, let's see if there's a search mechanism so we can just do Outlook. And there's not. So, oh, where would they put it here? Application ID, backup, maybe it's under Exchange, A, B, C, D, E, Exchange, Nope, not Exchange. Group, I'm not sure how they have it listed here. Mail. Okay, there we go. Mailbox settings, mailbox item. Okay, mailbox folder. So there's very, very granular thing. Let's start with mail. Read user's email. Okay, that's good. So if we just wanted to have н8н use the connectin to read people's email, to monitor email when it comes in, maybe process something on the back end, we're good. That's probably about all you would need to do. However, if you need to send email, you need н8н to send an email out as whatever, then you're going to need to make sure you check the send. So it's all this granularity. We did not have this level of scope of granularity to deal with on the other side of Google. This is why Microsoft is extremely frustrating, because as you can see, you're trying to look for something and you're not really quite sure. I struggled even in this demo, and I left it in here so you can experience the pain, right? Share the pain. And so it is a pain, and if you're familiar with it and you do this every single day, then that's one thing. But I don't do this every single day. I go into it like maybe every 3 months, 6 months, whatever. I don't think I've been in it in the last 6 months. This is the first time I've actually been back here again for a while. Because once you have it set up, for the most part, you set it and forget it, and that's the problem, where I go back to earlier about this access is only going to last for 24 months. So you need to set a reminder in your Outlook or something globally, because if you leave, you win, you get hit by a bus, you win a lottery, you get hit by a bus, whatever, you're not at the company anymore, then this is a problem. Like, this is going to die, especially if you're the only one that knows. So anyway, with regards to the mail, this is it. Now, if I needed to do more granular stuff like mailbox settings, I might need to go into this. So twirl them open and read. They're pretty good and descriptive. If not, hover over the little informational icon and it'll give you a much bigger read description. Obviously, if you're still confused, you can go over to the documentation. But anyway, you'll need to add this permission, and then you'll need to test. And if you can't get it to do what you need it to do, 9 times out of 10, it's these API permissions. Now, in certain use cases for certain things, let me just go ahead and quickly here. Let's just go with what I had selected. I think this will be good enough. Hopefully, I didn't uncheck. Yep, we're going to read. User read, profile, mail send, mail read. Okay, yeah, so these are all the permissions. Okay, here is what you need to be cognizant of. Admin consent required. All of these say no, 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 no. If you needed admin consent required in order for this to function, you will need to check and click this box like you saw that I did earlier, okay? However, these all seem to be okay and well and good, except for this one. Okay, now it says granted, but I didn't need to do it. I did it anyway. But if this says yes, you're definitely going to have to click that button on that one there, okay? And so in some use cases, over here on expose, you may need to add a scope, okay? And so the scope is just this application URI, but to add the scope, I know there's nothing really to add, really, because I don't need to have a scope here, but certain things do need a scope. I've run into this before. And then you might need to set or configure this. I don't think you'll need to do this for н8н, but if you do, just know that if you get an error, something about scope not set, scope undefined, scope something, scope anything, right? You're going to come here to the scope and you're going to need to add a scope. Right now, I haven't done anything that really needs one, but in any event, if you get that error, this is where you set that up. So just setting up the credentials is not enough. You saw that I set it up, but if you don't go through and do these API permissions, it's going to fail and you're going to be like, what the hell is going on? Because I've already authenticated, it said it's authenticated, life is good, why can't this work? And your flows are going to fail, and you're going to bang your head against the wall. So again, API permissions is where you need to be, and all of this is under administration of this particular, app registration that we set up. So here again are our app registrations. Under owned applications, notice that you can't see my н8н class. If I come under this all applications, I'm still not seeing it. If I come over to delete it, I still don't see it. It's like, what the flip is going on here? So come over here to owned, click the refresh. You don't see it. Come over here to all applications. Oh, there it is. It showed up now. And then here's the one. And like I said, if you don't see it, click on all. Anyway, you'll click in through it. And then if you need to set those permissions again, you go into API, and if you get an error about scope, click Expose API and start adding your scopes accordingly, okay? So that's it for this longer video. Ugh, told you it was disgusting and painful, and that's why I put the little face icons on these, because they just drive you crazy. In any event, luckily, most of you are not going to need to use this, but if you do need to use it, that's fine. There's other mechanisms like SendGrid, which is owned by Twilio, which you can use to send SMTP mail, and lots of other things. If you do use a third party, I will just call out that you'll need to make sure you look at the additional mail configuration settings to ensure proper delivery and not spammy looking messages. These are things that you'll need to go back to your DNS for, and you'll need to set up 2 items. I want you to write these down now. You'll need to look at something called DMARC, and you'll need to look at something called SPF. So I'll let you investigate that on your own and go off on that tangent, but you'll need to make sure that those DNS settings are set up properly and they are working. Otherwise, you may have problems, because if your authoritative mail center in DNS is Microsoft Outlook with all mail coming from that mail server, once you start introducing other emails to come from that domain, if it's not coming from this Exchange or Microsoft Outlook system, you're going to run into problems where your information is going to show up in people's junk boxes. It's not going to get delivered because they check against these DMARC configurations. They check against these SPFs. It's basically saying who is allowed to send email from this domain, because if anybody is not authorized, in theory, it could be coming from anybody, and it's called spoofing. And if somebody is spoofing email from your domain, masquerading as you, this is how these phishing attacks happen online. So in any event, I just went off on a tangent to just discuss that because we use Microsoft Outlook as an example. And if that's you, I wanted to make sure you're armed with a much simpler way to deal with mail as opposed to doing this. You might be better off just using something like SendGrid or some type of SMTP service. Even Amazon has AWS SES, I think it's called, Simple Email Server or something like that. In any event, all right, that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, in this video I just wanted to explain my Sansbury templates so that you can use this essentially with any customer or any client that you have an opportunity for, or use it internally for yourself. It's just a research agent, and so there's two parts to this. If we look at the Sansbury research agent, which is the back end, the use case, I've explained this earlier in other videos, but I'll quickly go through this again because this is for the template. And the use case is this is a grocery store in the UK, and they have Tesco, Asda and Morrison's that they are competitors to and or with. And I've set up an RSS feed to get the information. I've included in this download section this spreadsheet in Excel format, so you can import it into Google Sheets as an Excel document, import it or whatever. The point is, this doesn't have to be Sansbury. This should be any research that you want. I've already showed this again in another Google video. So Google. So if we go to Google Alerts, you can set alerts on anything. You can set alerts on, I don't know, so we'll just do my last name, right? And so there's no news for н8н, but let's just do news on н8н, right? So we'll get a bunch of great news on н8н, and then what you can do is you can come down to